Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Welcome back, everybody. She is a leadership coach and also works with emotional intelligence, helping people who own companies or run companies or businesses navigate the waters a little easier. And when we last talked, it was about the perception that many of us have about those in authority. And maybe it's not the right perception. Maybe they're not putting out the right signal. We're going to dig deeper into that and help on both sides of that with Nadine Zeinoun. And she's back with us. Nadine, welcome. How are you?
Hi, how are you, Steve? I'm great.
I'm very well. And I'm so glad we're circling back to this because, like you, I truly feel that it needs a little bit more investigation. And there's so many times where somebody is in charge of a team and they may come off aloof, maybe egocentric. There could be some challenges there, and it might not be their intent, but that's the perception that we all have of them. And what do you think that is? Is it what they're sending out, the messages that these leaders are sending out, the energy that they're sending out is the wrong type of message?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point. I mean, that's a great point because, it also is very frustrating. So before we address it, if we look at the impact it has on the leader, it's frustrating for the leader because they feel like, they have these good intentions in their mind, inside, they have these good intentions, but people are not getting it. And this makes them feel really frustrated and sometimes to the level of anger. And then this, again, it affects their own behaviors. They become more closed on themselves, and this makes them more aloof, etc. So it's like a vicious cycle. So we need to interrupt this vicious cycle somewhere. Now, the first thing I would say is, as you said, it's about maybe they are not giving out what is really inside. So maybe they're not properly communicating what's inside, and that's why people are not really understanding it. That's the major reason. But again, a lot of times they're so focused on themselves and on what they want to say and on their intent that they don't really notice that people around them are not really getting to them. So it's multifactorial, if you want, but the basic thing is the expression, how I am expressing myself as a leader, and whether this expression is really relaying the message that I do want to get through to the people. This is very important. Did I answer the question?
Yeah. Do you think, Nadine, it's they think that they need to come off as big and strong, and it's always that image you have of the boss, the CEO. In the companies that I've worked with, could be just a coincidence. I don't know if this is the way it is in a lot of places, but we would call them the corner pockets because their office usually was in the corner. And
I like that.
The corner pockets. It's almost like a pool table, and it was always in the corner. And then when I was a lot younger, there were two. There was the operations and the general manager, and the two back corner pockets. And it's almost as if you never wanted to walk down there.
Yeah.
It's staying off the radar. Don't need to go down there. Sometimes you pass by, hey, how you doing? And just keep walking because it's an uncomfortable feeling. Should it feel that way, or is it more of should these people feel like they're one of the team with some more authority, if you will, and not have that, we're here, they're here, you know what I'm saying? It's just it's always an unapproachable feeling with those in authority.
Absolutely. And you know what? Since you've experienced it, I want to ask you, what was the impact on you when it was like this? How comfortable were you in this situation?
Not at all. Not at all.
How much were you open to them and, giving your opinion without thinking twice or whatever?
One word, guarded.
Exactly.
Guarded.
Exactly.
And in the last position like that I had, which I left 4 years ago, the person in authority was just that, what we describe.
Okay.
And I think down inside, he was a great guy, but I am going to say he was always one that would cover his butt. and everybody would say it. And it just, there were some major things that took place, major situations that took place where he should have been behind the team, but he wasn't. That is what it is. He got replaced. Another guy comes in, and we thought that he was a more of a breath of fresh air, but I
Uh-huh.
came to find out that really kind of wasn't that way. And
Okay.
being very transparent here, I hung for a while and I left
Yeah.
because of a situation with him. And I'm the easiest guy to work with. But,
Mhm.
if you're not going to be honest, truthful, and be behind the team, I don't want to be behind you. And he was floored when I came in and said, "Yeah, I'm leaving." Like he couldn't
Yeah.
believe it. And guess what? He's not there anymore. He got
Oh,
replaced
wow.
by somebody else, and that somebody else is a good guy. Good guy,
Yeah.
good vibe. People love him. People all talk about it. And these two leaders, everybody would say the same thing about him. So it wasn't
Yeah.
just me. It wasn't just me.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. So you see this feeling that you got. I mean, they made you leave the company, so they drove you away. And this is
Yeah,
what happens when there is this gap, or when believe that as a leader, I am higher in terms of ranking. Okay,
right.
because then when I look down to people, and people don't want to be looked down at. So when I look down at people, people are not going to feel comfortable. People are not going to be safe with me. They're not going to feel safe. They're going to feel
Yeah.
threatened in some way. And this will limit how much they can give to the job. So their performance is impacted whether they trust me or not. So surely, definitely, this is
Mm.
not the way to go. If you really want a high performing team, it's important for you and your team to they feel that they're at the same level as you are. You're not on above them in any way.
So one question before we get to how to change that perception,
Mhm.
if you look at it as from the standpoint of a parent,
Mhm.
they always say parent can't always be your friend.
Yeah.
You have to parent. Maybe you can be sort of a friend to your kids, but
Mhm.
you can't be at that friend level because
Yeah.
you're going to lose the authority of being the parent.
Mhm.
So that being said, if we take that into the work world where it's a leader, how much can he be your friend? How much can, you go to happy hour maybe once a month or whatever and hang out with the team? How do you strike that balance? And I guess that does lead into how to change your perception or the perception
Absolutely.
that everybody has of you.
Yeah, they are very much related. Now, and that's a very good question, because you see there's a thin line between being a friend and not keeping people accountable, and between being a good leader, and an effective leader, because we have to keep in mind that accountability and empathy need to be at the same level. Okay, so there needs to be a good balance, and balancing them is not easy. It's not always a straightforward thing. So it takes a lot of awareness. It takes a lot of maturity in the leader. So we don't want to overdo it by becoming too much friendly. It's
Mm,
not about being friends. It's about being understanding. It's about being respectful to their needs and what they want
yeah.
and how they think and their ideas, accepting their ideas. So I don't have to be friends with them, but I need to listen to them. I need to be present if they're not emotionally okay. I need to sense that first, and then be able to sit with them and have a very open discussion that's not non-judgmental and very safe. You can't be here and make people feel not judged and safe. You need to be at their level to do that. But at the same time, if there's a business purpose, if there's a deadline they need to meet, you can still be here, but be firm. So when you make people understand that I'm going to be firm when we need to be firm, when the business needs it, but at the same time I'm here and I can listen to you, and connect with you and understand what you're going through. That's when the real trust is created, and that's when people will feel relaxed,
Mm.
safe, and accountable for whatever they need to do.
Yeah. And you just brought back a memory. Um, I was at a job for many years,
Hmm.
and this kind of illustrates what we're talking about here. And it's not about me. I'm just giving examples. And coincidentally, ironically, these things are just marinating. And this is what we're talking about, the same thing I experienced. So I was at the job for 2.5 decades. Big deal.
Wow.
Great job. And, different responsibilities along the way. And it was just getting to the point where they hired some people on my team, and it just wasn't feeling right for me anymore. Wasn't feeling right for them. The company was going in a direction that I didn't believe in or
Mm,
align with my morals. And I was like,
mm,
and I really do mean morals, but we don't have to go there. So it was time for me to go. So they offered me a position in a neighboring state. And I
mm.
said, and this was a fairly new general manager that was in. And I had just gone through a divorce fairly recently. And, I said to him, like, great, but I'm never going to see my daughter, and he's like, it's a ferry ride away. Yeah, you could see every once in a while. You get on the ferry, you'll see her. And I'm like,
What?
no, no. And it was cost of living was about the same. The position paid about the same. It was all kind of a parallel
Mm,
move. And ever since he said that, right away, I was just like, check the box off. I am done. And
yeah,
shortly thereafter, it just his lack of empathy.
exactly.
Instead of positioning it, I understand. I mean, that's tough. If you want, we have this position, and maybe you can work it out, or maybe we can work it out with you so that you can see your daughter. Back then, she was, like 7.
Yeah,
See her more often. Uh, I'm going to say it was a jerk. I
yeah,
just, where's the empathy? How would you like it if I'm going to tell you, you're not going to see your kid anymore.
exactly.
And
Exactly.
I let a week or two go by, and I woke up on a Monday and I said to myself, Wednesday's my last day. And I walked in
Wow.
and told him, and that was it. But to our point here, uh, this leader, since retired, no empathy. Like this, I don't know how you can say that to an employee if you're trying to sell me on this position in another state. No, I'm not. And you know what? Things happen for a reason. So glad I didn't take it, because at that part of the company, they turned around leaders and people like every other day. It
Wow.
would have been a bad move, bad
Yeah.
move. So I'm glad
So
I didn't
you
take it.
had the courage to make that move because it's not easy. After 25 years, you had been with the company. So that's not easy. It's not an easy move to make.
It wasn't. And I actually left and I didn't have a job. Didn't have a
Wow.
job. I had some severance, 6 months, and opened up my own company at that point.
Mm, mm.
But there was a lot of soul searching, a lot of stress during that time. But it was time for me to go. But that guy was the one that kind of would push me over the cliff to make that
Yeah.
decision
Yeah.
because of what you're talking about, the lack of empathy, the lack of
Absolutely.
understanding. And I get what he was
Absolutely.
saying, but you could have said it in a different way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's not exactly. You see, you said something very important. I mean, you got the business aspect of it and why, he from a business point of view, maybe he needed you to move, okay? But that's not the right way of doing it. I mean, if you connect with the person, really connect and not just pretend to connect and really, get a feel of what they're saying and the pain they're going through and why this is a difficult decision for you to make, for example, then everything would be changed because when you feel like he empathized, he understood, maybe you would have taken the role. Maybe you would have taken
Maybe
and you would have found something together that keeps the business and also makes you happy. But
I'm
it's
not
all
one to
about that
brag.
connection.
It just brought back another memory. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. On the
These are these
contrary.
people that we're talking about. Um, I'm so humble, but I have to say I was a superstar for the company for many
Hmm.
years, even up
Hmm.
to that point. And the person who was the general manager that this guy replaced
Yeah.
went to the neighboring state company. Okay.
Hmm.
And I knew her, and I was her star along with a couple of other people on our team. And when I went to that neighboring state and to look at this job that they were offering, I'll never forget that she lacked empathy. And that was one of the other reasons. And I remember at the time, I had kids, I remarried, walking in there with my baby in a stroller, and she got it and everything because I had to travel. And she said, I don't know if you remember this book, Someone Moved My Cheese.
Yeah. Who moved my cheese? Yeah.
So as I go, and this was a wonderful leader, it was a woman, and she was, she didn't take any garbage. And if you worked well with her, it was golden. And we did have a
Mm.
lot of, it was probably about 4 years we worked together. It was great. But I'll never forget, she reaches behind her desk, almost from a box, and hands me that book and basically saying that, your cheese is moving now. Like, what happened to the empathy? That went away. And honestly, I lost some respect for her. And I had
Yeah,
her up here. She was just, it was a good run with her, but once she moved and, to do that kind of thing, just not cool. Not cool. But
yeah,
again, it gets back to these leaders are not plugged into their employees. They're kind of
absolutely.
removed from them.
Absolutely. And I love that you're bringing up these examples because it shows us the impact on you. Just for people, for our audience to understand how important it is, because look at the impact on you as an employee. Look what happened to you. Look how much disrespect you now feel for, she lost the respect that you had for her just
Yeah,
because of not being empathetic. So it's a big thing. It's a big deal. And it's
it
not
is.
easy to be empathetic. I mean, I do understand it's not easy, but it's learnable. So it's something we can develop and we can learn with good awareness. We can get there.
When you work with somebody, Nadine, in that capacity, how do you make allow somebody to tune into the empathy? Or is it one of those things, either you got it or you don't, or if you have it, you have to find it?
It's something you can develop for sure. And
Okay,
that's why we talk about this, because if it's something that we can't work on, then there's no use in talking about it. I mean, why would I know that I'm
sure.
low in empathy if I can't do anything about it? So no, absolutely, we can work on that. And it can be one of the objectives of the coaching is to enhance the person's empathy. And the way, I mean, there are many ways we do that, but the most impactful way is when they understand, because in coaching we don't give answers, we just ask a lot of questions. So and when they start discovering little by little the impact of their behavior on people around them,
Mm,
when they start seeing this awareness, because as I said before, the problem is that leaders are so busy and they're so pressured that they don't pay much attention to the team around them. The focus is on the business, on what they think of the business, how they see things, because they believe that people feel that what they feel, and it's not true.
okay.
So what I feel is not what you feel. So they make that assumption that if I'm feeling okay about this, then the whole team is feeling okay about it.
Mm,
So they don't have that awareness about how they are impacting people.
yeah.
And when you bring to their awareness that, look how this behavior is impacting people around you, they're like, oh my God, I wasn't aware of that. So it's not that they don't care. They do care deep down inside. They do care. It's just that they're not aware. They think that when they do this, they will inspire people or they will, make people focused on the objective and want to achieve it. That's not
Mm.
true. It's not. So this is where their intention and the impact is very, very far apart. What
Do
they think is not really what happens.
do you think that they're afraid in some regards to let down their guard? Let down their, leader CEO guard to come
Mhm.
down here, where somebody might think that if they're more empathetic, more understanding, that they may appear to be in a position of maybe a little weakness, and kind of like Superman, take the cape away. They
Yeah,
don't have that.
absolutely.
Is it okay?
Yeah, some of them, I won't say everyone, of course, I don't like to generalize, but many of them, yes, they do
Hmm,
feel like if they become more empathetic and if they listen to people, then they're weak leaders or they're not really doing, their job as a
okay,
leader because they think that their job as leaders is to be tough and, to be on top of everything and never listen to people because if you change your mind, then you look weak,
right.
etc. So yeah, sometimes it does have to do with the way they perceive leadership. Okay, so it's not an appropriate perception about a true leader.
Mm. When you work with somebody, is that something that you can go with me on this? Hold the mirror up to them and say, "This is what we're getting here. Is this really what you want?"
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, coaching is about mirroring. We say mirroring sometimes, that a coach is like a mirror because I need to make you see what you don't see. If
Right.
if I don't, then I'm not doing my job as a coach. And sometimes it takes a lot of courage to do that because you need to show the person something that they don't want to see or they're not ready to see. And it's not very comfortable in those
Uh-huh.
moments, but it's essential for their, progress and their development. It's essential. And sometimes we have to do that. unfortunately.
Yeah, well, that's the, that's the reality. You need to know
Yeah.
the projection that you're putting out there. What would your suggestion be for somebody in these positions who wants to really get a feel for their employees and how the employees are feeling, short of putting a suggestion box and having people, fill out a
Mhm.
card anonymously? Does it come down to connecting with your team? I don't want to say this because I've been in this position, but have everyone separately come into your office and ask them. Now it's like, I'm in front of the firing squad. It's so uncomfortable. Like just getting called down to the corner pockets, just like, oh boy, what's this about? Uh, how would you approach that if you want to learn, take the pulse or the temperature of your team?
Yeah, it's going to be step by step, I must say, because the
Okay.
first time you're going to try to ask their team, they're going to be like you were, okay, what's going on? Why are they listening to me? Why, because they're not used to that. So it's going to be a gradual process. But of course, they need to listen more to the team. So in team meetings, they need to step back on giving direction and just sit there and allow themselves to listen and listen without judging. So not just because sometimes we think they listen, and most of the times you see how they answer regarding their listening skills. They give themselves a very high, uh, you know, uh,
Score.
score on
Yeah.
listening skills because they think that they listen. Why? Because they tell me, no, I always listen. I go into the meeting and I ask people around the room, okay, so what do you think of this? Okay. However, what happens, the end result is they're coming in with a solution in their mind and they're just listening to convince the people that their ideas are wrong and their own ideas are the correct ones. So
Mm.
that's not listening. Listening is not just about, hearing the blah, 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 blah around the room. It's about really thinking of what they're saying and thinking, okay, could this work? And why that? And if it sounds nonsense to me, or if it sounds silly to me, instead of immediately rejecting it and putting it aside and judging it as silly, I need to believe that this person, for them to say it out loud, they believe in it. So let me be curious and ask, so what's good about that? So what do you see that's good about that? Because I'm not really connecting. And then they would give me their own, interpretations and everything they're thinking, etc. Then sometimes, not sometimes, most of the times, they would give me this idea, which I never thought about before. And wow, it's something that really
Mm.
teaches me something.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I totally see that, and I experienced it. I went back to that company that we're talking about that I
Hmm.
left 3 or 4 years
Hmm.
ago, and marketing. We'll just say they're a marketing type company.
Okay.
I have a company. I was going to work with them, and still
Hmm.
may on this capacity. But it was refreshing going back because they brought the entire team in
Hmm.
to come up with ideas for my client.
Hmm.
And there was no judgment. The big guy was in the room and just hanging out. And he kind of let the entire staff run it. And people would pop up an idea. Here's an idea. They'd have fun with it. They'd laugh at the idea in a fun
Wow.
way. Oh, what about this one? Or that's a great idea. What about? And the synergy was fantastic.
Wow.
And it wasn't that way when I was at the company because it was a different leader. It was
Wow.
a different leader. Yeah.
And I want to ask you, what was the result, Steve, in this meeting?
So many great ideas.
Exactly. This is how people become innovative and creative
Yeah.
when they feel safe and they play around with ideas, as you said, not having their ideas judged and
No.
immediately, bombarded with why they can't work,
Yeah, I don't think there was a bad idea in the room. There were some I felt, and again, that's subjectionable, but some I felt that were better than others.
Hmm.
And when it was all done, it was on just, big not a whiteboard, but big sheets of
Yeah.
paper,
Yeah.
huge, like three of them. And the ideas would be written down. Then everybody had a vote on the ideas. And it could
Hmm.
be anonymous, your vote. You just put, a color, I had a color sticker and put it up on next to each idea. But it worked really well, really,
Yeah.
really well.
Yeah. Great.
But that kind of thing, and I'm seeing what you're seeing. It's a process. It's not like we're
Yeah.
going to walk in the room and have all these people
No.
but
Slowly, slowly.
slow process. Yeah, slow change. But a lot of these people were the same people that were there when I was there under a different leadership.
Oh,
Oh
interesting.
yeah, oh yeah. A couple of newbies, but for the most part, and a whole different ball game,
Mm.
in terms of creativity. So
Yeah, yeah.
we're just about out of time, but it's like it flies by. Somebody wants to work with you. Let's say somebody is a leader of a company and feels
Mhm.
that they're not fully connecting with their teams. How does it start working with you, Nadine?
They can go onto my website, which is www.nadinezeinoun, so NADINEZEINOUN.com, and they can just book a call. So it's a free call, and it's a complimentary session where we
Sure.
can really support them to, take the first few steps into becoming a better leader. And if they need more than that, then we can, talk together and work out something
Sure.
for them.
When you think about it, all the time that's lost in a company and in productivity, everything, if people don't feel like they're vested in it, it's
Yeah.
what a mistake for somebody not to reach out to you and figure it out how they could be doing it, even if you think you're pretty good at what you're doing in terms of a leader.
Mhm.
What if you could be better? How much
Yeah.
more productivity, how much more fun everybody would feel when they're showing up for work every day. And again, it doesn't have to be a party, but it has to
Yeah.
feel like, like
Yeah, you have to enjoy it.
yeah, and
Yeah.
that you make a difference. And
Exactly.
I think,
Exactly.
overall, you feel appreciated.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
and keep your book, still the cheese, throw that out. I get the book, but there's a place for everything. And usually when that book is handed out, it's not a good place
Yeah,
for it.
it's not a good sign. Yeah.
It's not a good sign. You're right. Nadine, great talking with you, and
Thank
look
you,
forward
Steve.
next time we get together.
Me too.
Appreciate
Take
it.
care. Have a wonderful week.
You too. We'll be right back.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
Mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house. And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned.
This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.